My father was a professor at Virginia Tech for a long time. Eventually ended up with a 660-acre farm over in Giles County, and they figured out they needed a way to pay for it, and people suggested that running stockers on it would be a good idea. So we jumped into that knowing absolutely nothing about it, and I figured out that I really liked cattle and grazing. And I pretty much like cattle the same way you'd like dogs, and these are a good example. I just like being around them. I like everything about them. And I also like the fact that there was an opportunity to make a little money on them. We have mostly South Pole cattle. The cattle behind us are Red Angus that have been bred to South Pole. You know, I've been through a lot of iterations of rotational grazing over the years. I started back in the late 80s with just basic field-to-field rotations, and since then have tried about every variation of rotational intensive grazing. I see merit in all of them. Continuous grazing is taking a group of cattle and putting them on a particular plot of land and leaving them there for the entire grazing season. What happens is cattle graze selectively. They eat the best plants. Continuous grazing, which is the way I grew up. It's what everybody did and most people still do. But the difference between this and that is such that I couldn't go back to continuous grazing. I have the privilege and the burden of making a living doing this. One goal is to make a living. The biggest help in doing that has been regenerative grazing. We have very low inputs. I haven't bought fertilizer since the early 2000s, which is a tremendous expense that regenerative grazing allows me to dodge. By building the soil and building the roots, you're just less susceptible to the drought conditions. You know, one thing I wish I had done earlier, one thing among many, but I wish I'd had the foresight to plant more trees for shade and for windbreaks, when I was much younger. Shade is one of the major challenges I have. Before, there were cattle on both sides of the creek, and all these creek banks were basically bare dirt and scraped and rutted from the cattle going up and down, and it was like that all up and down the stream, except in the steepest places where they couldn't climb out. There just wasn't nearly the amount of plant life on the stream banks that there are now. Nice down here now, where before it was kind of an ugly, scraped up, muddy and manure area. Mm-hmm. Several years after I'd gotten the cattle out of the creek and had noticed the increase in wildlife, it is healing, but it takes a while.
And you've been here since 1975. Where would you like it to be in, say, 2035?
I'd like for it to be just like this, only a whole lot better, and growing more forage, seeing more wildlife, have cattle that are doing better and better. I think optimistic about the future of regenerative grazing and grazing agriculture in particular. And the reason is the young people that are coming up and the beginning farmers, they are so receptive to new ideas. They don't resist the way some of the older ones like myself tend to resist new ideas.